Hi folks, thank you all for joining. We'll go ahead and get started. I have a lot to cover and not too much time, so thank you all for coming. My name is Garrett Reedy. I'm here today to talk to you about some of the challenges and considerations of growing a service offering inside of your organization that has the targeted specific use of FileMaker. In addition, some of the challenges that you'll see in basically growing and servicing a living and breathing service offering that will and can change over time. So since I all know that you're here really to learn about me and not what I'm speaking about, let me nip that in the bud and give you a brief background of myself. As I mentioned, my name is Garrett Reedy. I'm a native Washingtonian, and that's Washington, D.C., not Washington State. I grew up just outside of D.C. in Falls Church, Virginia, where I currently live now. Two interesting facts about me: I'm a huge animal lover. I also enjoy off the beaten path travel, so I love meeting people of different cultures and backgrounds and really learning about them. I've worked at Booz Hamilton for the last 17 years and had the opportunity to serve in many different content management roles, ranging from FileMaker development, as you can imagine, to document imaging, to content management, to even Oracle big data financial management. For those of you not familiar with Booz Allen Hamilton, we're a large consulting firm. We're a Fortune 500 company. We've been in business for over 100 years, and one of our key clients is the US government. So let me start you off by just giving you a brief history of time here of where I had come and really what my light bulb moments and spark was that started me working in FileMaker. So in 2002, I developed my first database. It was called Received EEV. It was really clunky and ugly, but believe it or not, it's actually still in use today. Now, we've worked to remove some of the ugliness and clunkiness, but to me, that was my light bulb moment. And really, I had developed this system out of frustration with an intensely manual process that I was supporting. So once I saw the capabilities that could be created and realized through FileMaker, I started kind of developing a couple of other systems. Then really in 2008, as I was managing another team, came up with the idea of creating a business plan to merge the support of about 20 different databases at that time into a centralized service offering that other teams inside of the organization could reach to get specific information content or content management systems developed by a talented, experienced developer and hosted in a secure environment. Since that time, we've grown considerably. As you can see, we now have 6 full-time developers that support the project management, administration, development, and support of 165 plus systems, 1,500 licensed FileMaker Pro users, and then we have about 15,000 people that reach through our WebDirect per year. So it's grown quite tremendously. So prior to starting the development of a service offering, you really have to ask yourself, just like when you're developing a new database, what components are you really trying to unlock? You know, where are there gaps in your organization, whether they be financial, process gaps? Where is there the opportunity to implement FileMaker in a repeatable way that really impacts the organization? So as you will see at this conference, FileMaker just has a tremendous amount of capabilities. However, there are only certain ones necessarily that you may want to focus on implementing inside of your organization, your bread and butter, so to speak, of development. So figuring out what those are and where they can be repeated is a key component. So what piece of FileMaker are you going to unlock? What is your received EEV? Next, find your champions. So find someone in the organization, generally a more senior individual that kind of believes in your idea, that can see through the newness of what you're trying to create and support you. That person can also be key in conversations that you're not going to be involved in and can be a great mentor. Another key component to just us getting started was the idea of consolidating things. So we consolidated the access points, how people get into our environment. We consolidated our licensing. We worked with FileMaker to make sure we had the absolute best licensing cost and deployment. Also, getting everybody on the same version of FileMaker was another key aspect for us at the time, and I'm not sure if folks in here have worked and remember the transition from 6 to 7, but that was a big thing for us, making sure that everybody was on the new version. So as we did development, we didn't have to take into consider so many different factors. So once you get rolling, once you have some folks, some databases built and some folks interested in what you're doing, how do you keep up and maintain that success? So I started this slide with what I feel is the most important aspect of any IS organization, and that's to secure your security. FileMaker has a lot of tremendous security capabilities inside of the tool. So really one of the first steps that you want to do is understand those, start unlocking them and utilizing them. Another couple of key aspects is don't give your users full access accounts. That's a big key one. Utilize, if you have Active Directory or some other overarching authentication to be able to access your systems. That's another great opportunity. And build multiple security groups. Oftentimes in your systems, you'll have different types of users accessing it. So thinking about that in advance and building your security to be able to support that can really be leveraged going forward to provide a nice environment for your clients. Another thing is back it up. Back up your systems. How many people here currently run backups? Okay, great. How many of you people in the last year have actively tried to recover one of your backups? Okay, outstanding, because that I have seen so many times. People run their backups, it looks beautiful, they have an emergency, they go to recover it, and they find out, whoops, I wasn't backing it up correctly, maybe I was just making a clone, maybe I'm backing up a corrupted version, and as a result, it's not really something that I want to use going forward. But that's something you really want to take the opportunity to invest in up front. Also, disaster recovery and just standard processes for getting your servers back online should really be documented so that you have that for reference going forward. Another thing that we created was a service level agreement for our clients. So we basically documented what we can do, what our capabilities are, what our clients can expect from us, and what we expect our clients to provide in turn to make the project successful. In some cases, and depending on the client, in our cases, we may actually have them sign that document, that there is an agreement to the fact that that's how we're going to work together. Another key aspect that I saw was creating our own tools for us to use. So I'm not sure how many people are familiar with the expression like a cobbler's kid has no shoes. So people who are not from the 18th century, a cobbler is someone who makes shoes. So the idea is that a cobbler will spend more time on his or her work than they will actually creating things for their family. So as a result, we took that to heart, and we really made sure that we had some components, some systems that we've developed behind the scene that really support our service offering. The first one, as I mentioned before, was a centralized directory. We have a centralized access point that all of our clients through FileMaker Pro come into. We basically give them a little shortcut with a startup script. It's a little simple database. When they open that up, it looks out across our server environment, finds our directory, and connects them to that. Then they have this beautiful centralized place where they can access all of our tools, documentation, they can reach to us for support, and we have the opportunity there to post messages around support, maintenance, other things that are occurring that the user may need to be aware of. We created a project management system. So we have a lot of work coming in. We needed to keep track of that. So we created a system that would allow us to track our projects, to keep statuses on them, to track specific tasks that occur underneath of them. We also have an access request system. So when a user needs access to one of our systems, we have an online tool that they go into to request access and receive approval. So that's actually something that we market to our prospective clients for FileMaker, that when you all come in, you inherit a lot of the stuff that we support, including the ability to have access requests automated and in a very easily accessible fashion through WebDirect. We've created a knowledge base. It's where all of our reusable code goes into. We have a task journal. That's something that keeps track of every process that's running in our environment, every automated robot process, and tells us whether it completed and when, or if it had any issues. And that allows us to create some environmental dashboards. Basically, a lot of these things give our developers the opportunity and our support administrators the opportunity to get ahead of any issues that we see in our environment. So if we see something's running slow, we generally know before our clients do and can take opportunities to address that. So another key aspect is lifecycle support. So how do you go about supporting something that can really quite easily grow out of hand. So one of the things that we have to take into close consideration is what we actively build inside a FileMaker. So FileMaker, you can make some really, really cool and out there stuff. That's awesome. But at the same time, some of those components are really hard to support. They take a lot of effort. There's challenges involved with them. So really, we have to constantly ask ourselves, if we're coming up with new tools and new ideas, is this really something that we can conscientiously support going forward? And as a result, are our clients going to be happy? You know, we may build a tool for a client that works really well, but if it's breaking all the time, they're not going to be too happy with that. So we have to compensate as a result on what we develop. Another thing too is we really try to empower our users. You know, we have a lot of users with a really small set of developers. So anything that we can turn over to them and give them control of through a very secure manner is awesome. So an example of this could be drop-down values. So we have a few users, as I mentioned, we have different security groups, so a few users that have the ability to control drop-downs or have the ability to add and edit certain values inside of the system. This way, as those systems need support, in most cases, there is a person on the team, a more senior or experienced person, that can actually make those changes. Next is customer support. So this is not a popular way of thinking about customer support, but this is honestly the way I think about it. I don't ever want to talk to a customer. You know, I don't ever want somebody to have to reach to me for support. I want my users to be able to find the answers that they're looking for immediately, or for my systems to be so easy that, it's like second nature. I don't want them to have to find answers through a long search of a blog or going through a bunch of documentation. I want them to get to the meat and potatoes right away so that they can get back to using your system. So for customer support, we really look at it like a utility. Not many people today notice that the lights were on. Notice that you got coffee this morning, the coffee maker worked, your cell phone service is on. Those are all things that are out there all the time, and you've come to expect and rely on them, that really the only time you're noticing them is when they're not working. That's the same way I want my clients to be. I only want my clients to have to reach out to me if there's something new, that they want to request or they want to ask. I also don't mind if they reach out to tell us how great we're doing. That's a whole nother thing, though. So view your systems as a utility, something that should be working all the time. So let me start with this quote. And for those of you who don't know Edwin Booz is the Booz in Booz Allen Hamilton. He's one of the pioneers in the management consulting area. And this is a famous quote by him. Anything that can be performed can be measured. So as a result, as the lead of a service offering inside of his organization, I am constantly being challenged to find a meaningful way to report our impact across the organization. So what we came up with is an impact assessment form. What this form does is we have our clients fill it out at the beginning of the start of a project. And what it captures is, how many hours do they expect to save from a labor perspective for this project? Is this project deferring any costs that they might have gotten by purchasing software off the shelf? Really, are there compliance impacts to it? That's a big one in our particular organization, is do the things have a compliance impact? Also, we also capture the repercussions from delaying. So you have people that reach to you and, oh my gosh, I need this yesterday. Well, let's see. We then take this information and use it to not only track what sort of impact our environment and systems are having. So year over year, month over month, I can tell you the particular value that a system in our service offering has provided, and based on how long it's been deployed, what its total value is. I also can use that information to prioritize my project demand. So if I have 50 projects, which has happened, that are pending, I have the opportunity to look at those consistently based on information that the client provided and figure out where is the best investment of my time and effort. So changes and upgrades, this is hard. You have a big organization, you have a lot of systems. before doing an upgrade, you got to take everything into consideration. So you got to look at the structure of your system, what capabilities you've unlocked. You've got to take into consideration functions and features that you've built over years in different versions inside of the tool. So you got to be prepared for that. One of the ways that you can get around that is really monitoring what you're rolling out. Evaluate and reuse developed capabilities and functions. In our group, what we do is when we find something cool, any one of our developers comes up with a really neat concept, especially something that's portable and can be deployed in a lot of applications, we socialize that with the group. We note that capability inside of our knowledge base, and it becomes the standard for us to use going forward. And that's a constantly recycled process of going through, finding a better way to do it, and implementing that long term. Another key aspect of this is also new ideas and functionality. So not everything that comes up or that we collectively, the developers in my organization, think of is the best thing for us to roll out from an organization perspective. So what do I mean by that? As I mentioned earlier, some things are more complicated. Some things require, only my most senior developer can actually figure out what the heck is going on inside of a database. I don't want that to be the case. Every person in my support group needs to be able to go into a system, to understand what's going on, to make sense out of it, and to be able to take some action from it. Now, that doesn't mean everybody in my organization has to be able to solve the most complicated problems. But from a tiered support structure, the first person being able to go in there, figure out kind of what's going on, evaluate that, and then escalate it as appropriate is a great way to handle support. So how do we make all this magic happen? So the crazy cast of characters that I have in my team have just an absolute plethora and variety of backgrounds. I have people with degrees in travel and tourism management. I have people who are specialized in communication or business. I have individuals with records management and training experience. But really, it's a conglomeration of a huge number of different tool sets and skill sets. So what I would say, what I mean by this, is when you're looking to hire a new person or bring someone into your team, if you're supporting a service offering like this, FileMaker previous experience is not always the key factor. I will say only 1 in 6 of us prior to joining the organization actually had experience in FileMaker. So all the rest of us learned on the job. But the capabilities that those individuals brought from their previous experience, they added so much to the team and so much to the way that we collectively thought about how to approach things, from the range of development all the way down to how we interact with our end users. Another thing you can do is leverage the individual areas of expertise of your team. So I'm sure we've all heard the term, when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Well, that's fine. But with a lot of individuals in my team, we have, one person it's a nail, to one person it's a screw, to another it's a bolt. Now, all of these tool sets and approaches eventually probably will work. But as a lead, what your criteria is to find the best tool for that individual project. At the same time, I want my staff to hone their skill sets. I want them to have the best hammer. I want them to have the best screwdriver, and I want them to have the best ratchet. The idea is that when they come to use them, I want my team to be able to share with me their ideas, and from a collective perspective, we ultimately decide on what is the best step forward for implementation. Another thing to do is create ownership. So each individual in my group has a particular area that they're responsible for covering. This is their bread and butter. Oftentimes it's based on previous experience or interest, but they're the POC in the team for those type of questions. So we have a design question, there's a person we ask. We have a training question, we have an expert in that area. We have a development question, we have a person who's an expert there. And really what that does is allows us collectively, for each member of the team, to really be able to provide a lot of their own feedback and perspective into a process, and again, collectively, we ultimately benefit from that. Another key aspect is to share your goals and focus. So my team needs to know, what are my goals today? What do I feel about the service offering? That I hate providing customer support, so I want to figure out how to get around that. But also what my long-term goals are. Where do we see our service offering in 6 months or a year? What do we see from an upgrade perspective? What capabilities do we want to try and start dipping our toes in to kind of get some feedback and some consideration of whether that's something long-term we want to be able to support? So in conclusion, I'm a big quote guy. So I really like quotes. So these are 3 of my favorites. I'll tell you how they relate to me. The short pencil is better than a long memory. I'm big on documenting stuff. And the reason is because somebody will come to you, whether it's your compliance team, your manager, your leadership, and they'll want to see what you're doing. Already having that documentation in place and keeping it maintained, especially when they're asking for me to turn it around in a couple of days and I've got 1 million projects already pending, I've already got other work to do, that sort of thing is just absolutely incredible. So as you have the opportunity, as you go through and create things, trust me, document them. It really pays off in the long run. Another quote is, loose ends turn into knots. So it's the thing that you didn't consider, the thing that you didn't spend time investing in, that you glazed over, that you didn't take the opportunity to really make right, that's going to come back and haunt you. And I guarantee it will. Users find weird stuff inside of the system, and they're not happy when they do. So everything that you can do to try and prevent that, to try and consider up front what all of the potential uses of your tools or all of the ways people may be trying to break it could be, and put steps in place to address those. Now, I don't mean Band-Aids. Band-Aids are easy to put on, but they're easy to fall off. I mean, anyone who's been to the pool this summer can tell you that. It's gross, right? So you got to fix it. Fix it not for the short term, but for the long term. And sometimes that takes a longer investment, but trust me, it's worth it. The last one, I'm sure you all are very familiar with this Abraham Lincoln quote, which is, it's hard to find quick and reliable information on the internet, right? So go out and do your research. Use the forums that are out there. We have all of you in this room and the FileMaker community as a whole are really great individuals. We're all willing to share our knowledge, to share our experiences. So leverage that. Learn from the trials and tribulations of others to try and avoid that in your service offering. All right, well, that brings me to the end of my presentation. I would be happy to take questions here in just a second, but I will remind everyone that if you could provide feedback, that would be really great. You can also get a copy of this presentation at the link below. It will not have updates. I'm done working on this, so what you see is what you get. And then, of course, as I mentioned, fill out your evaluation. So I'll be happy to take any questions, and if folks want to go over, yes, sir, if you would like to go over to the microphone just so it's being recorded, folks can hear you.
I just have a comment about the first quote.
Yes.
The original quote was, "The dullest pencil is sharper than the best memory."
Well, there you go.
Mark Twain.
There you go. Thank you. So a little ad lib there,
And I use that when people come up and say they've lost their password. I say, get a dull pencil and write it down.
That's one way to do it. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Curious what your centralized directory looked like.
Our centralized directory is a tab structure. I wish I had it up here, but it's a tab structure. Underneath of each tab, or each tab is designated by a specific business unit that database falls underneath. So for instance, we might have people services, which is our HR department, or our IS department, or our finance department. Underneath of each of those tabs are just a bunch of different links to our 165 different systems. In addition, at the top, we deploy things like custom menus. We have links to our support email address so people can find us, and also ways to get to other documentation or other websites that we may have. So hopefully that provides a nice visual. I will say it's really pretty. We do have someone who is a graphic designer. So he recently joined the team, and we've been consistently kind of going back and trying to address everything and make it really pretty. So I'm really proud of our directory. And again, the beauty of our directory is we have 10 servers, right? So I can take a database for whatever reason I want to and move it to another server in my server environment without it ever impacting the end user. All I do is change where my directory is linking to it. The end user doesn't know any difference. They go in, they click the same spot that they've always clicked on, and off they go to their appropriate system. So this provides us just an incredible amount of flexibility inside of our environment. So really would encourage you all to consider that. Any other questions? Okay, thank you all so much for attending. I really appreciate it. Hope you got a lot out of it.